So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great privilege and honor to have you all with us today. We have our village board trustee, Steve Quigley, who is the liaison of the library with us, and also Edith Glass, who is in charge of this memoir group. And all the members, you are all welcome, and I'm so happy to see you all here because I think it's 4 years ago when we started this group. Oh, more than 4, okay. And I'm so happy that you guys are still coming and continue and enjoying the program. And also I'd like to thank you, the friends of the Tuckahoe Library, who are sponsoring this program. As all of you know, we have a lot of other events which is coming every month. We just passed the calendar. So please come and join in any of the events. Call us, sign up, and then join the program. And I'm going to pass this to Edith. And thank you so much again for coming.
Thank you for being so gracious.
Today, we are joined by members of the Tuckahoe Library. Now, the Tuckahoe group began in 2009. We meet monthly to share newly recorded snapshots of people and events in our lives. The meetings are conducted in a non-critical manner. This nurturing, supportive environment has allowed our group to become a new family. All of us now live in Westchester. However, some of us were born in the United States and others have come to live here from other countries. Today, more Americans are considering the legacies they want to leave their descendants, including their personal histories. We all realize that if our life experiences are not recorded for our descendants, they will be lost forever. We hope that after you hear our memoirs, you will begin to write your own. And I'm going to give you a clue now. A memoir is a snapshot, a Kodak moment. If you try to write about your life in the 1960s, you're doomed to failure. But if you write about a Thanksgiving dinner you attended in the 1960s, you will be successful. It's all like looking through a keyhole in the door and just being able to see one thing. All right, so today you are going to hear many snapshots of our lives. And after we are finished, will you please stay for the reception? I'm going to start off. I'm Edith Glass. I was born in New York City. I now live in Chappaqua, and my memoir is titled A Special Grandfather. I don't think my family realizes what a hero we have lying in our Riverside Cemetery in Saddle River, New Jersey gravesite. This hero was my grandfather, Charles Hyam Delgov, who lived from 1874 to 1957. He is the reason why my family was able to have the American dream. He did the following. He realized that the Tsarist pogrom in Hotin, Ukraine, were not a healthy environment for his wife and two young sons, Harry, born in 1889, and Joseph in 1901. He knew that he had to find a safe place for his family, knowing that he would have to leave his mother and many family, relatives, and friends. He saved his money and, having great courage, traveled alone in 1903 to Southampton, England, where he boarded a ship for a crowded steerage journey. He arrived in New York City not knowing one word of English. He only spoke Russian and Yiddish. Charles came to New York City and worked very hard as a shirt ironer, a difficult job, especially in the hot, steamy, and humid summer days of New York City. There weren't any electric irons at that time. He learned to speak English and rented an apartment at 67 East First Street. He saved enough money so that his wife and children could travel second class and did not have to go through immigration on Ellis Island when they arrived. According to ship's records, his wife Ida arrived with $5 in her pocket. Charles always he made sure that his children took advantage of a public school education. He brought his sister, Sonia, and her family over, and together they brought their mother, Shifra, and stepfather, having to smuggle them over the Canadian border. Charles always worked in the dry cleaning business. He was very handsome and loving, and my father, Joseph, adored him. Charles was a slim, tall, and handsome man whose beautiful silver, wavy hair made him most striking to look at. His hair had turned silver when he was only 30 years old. He was so good-looking that many beautiful women ran after him. However, he remained loyal to his wife for 25 years, but divorced her due to her very, very nasty personality. I am glad that my grandfather had the courage to leave his home in Ukraine. During World War II, on August 27, 1942, the German troops took 23,600 Jews from neighboring Kamenets-Podilsky and shot them. This probably happened to the Jews in Hotheim, which is located southwest of Kamenets-Podilsky. I know that I wouldn't have been born if it wasn't for the courage of my grandfather Charles.
Very good, David. Very good.
My next, you can really write about anything. So my next memoir is titled Wallpaper. I have always, I think we need this a little bit louder.
Yes.
Okay. I have always thought that walls covered with paper were far more interesting than painted ones. Looking at a papered wall, it is similar to having an artist come into your home and having painted something special for you and your family. I was first introduced to wallpaper when I was 7 years old, when my mother had her bedroom at 25 Central Park West wallpapered in a beautiful floral design. Whenever I entered this room, I felt as if I was standing in the middle of a garden. This flower garden gave me a feeling of spring, even in the midst of winter. The only thing missing was the scent of flowers. Mother kept this wallpaper intact until I went away to college. I really didn't get into wallpaper until we moved into our home in Chappaqua, at which time I went wild. Wallpaper was very much in fashion then. Every room in my house is wallpapered except for the kitchen and hallway near my children's bedrooms. Searching out the correct wallpaper for each room took time, but the end results have always been joyful. I have never tired of my wallpaper. This past year, I thought the inside of our house might look a little dated. Everything today is paint. I guess the cost of papering has become too expensive for most people. I decided to redecorate my daughter Mindy's former bedroom, which has now become a den. The wallpaper in this room was very bright and bold, and I decided to remove the paper from 3 of the walls, leaving the main wall still papered. I had 3 walls painted white, since there was white in the wallpaper. The room turned out beautifully. The only new decorative objects that I bought for this room were 2 pillows for the couch. The room no longer looked dated. The next area I decided to change was the foyer. I began to feel that so much wallpaper made the entrance to my house dated. The foyer was papered in an 18th century style wallpaper which had a gold foil background. However, I still loved the wallpaper and did not want to get rid of all of it. I decided to keep the left wall papered and only remove the paper from the right side, where 3 closets were located. Little did I realize that foil paper is very difficult to remove. It took 5 8-hour days to remove the wallpaper from the left side. The house became a mess, littered with small scraps of paper. No matter how much the paper was scored and sprayed with a special wallpaper solvent, it resisted being removed from the walls. On the 6th day, the walls were spackled and primed, and on the 7th day, they were finally painted. The end result was exactly what I wanted. To offset the plain painted doors, I hung a variety of pictures which I took from other rooms in the house. 16 pictures now hang on the doors, and this area is now known as my art gallery. I have no plans to change any other room in the house. I am happy with my home. It has a fresh look to it while still maintaining the beauty of each wallpaper room. My motto is, whoever buys my home, the wallpaper problem is theirs. Josephine, you're next.
Okay. Watch this.
And then we will go across.
Okay.
That's fine.
Don't really see that
Hold
much
this
wallpaper.
right up to your mouth.
Hi, everybody. Hi. This is about all-day picnics. I
A little
remember-
closer. Who you are. No, no,
Oh,
a
yeah.
little closer.
Because, yeah.
Josephine.
My name is Josephine Lucci. I was born in Lawrence Hospital, Bronxville, New York. I now live in Tuckahoe all my life. My memoir is titled All Day Picnics. I remember the days when life was a little more simple, more laughter, less crime, less worries, and so on. We didn't have much money back then because we were first getting started in life as married couples with little children. We never really thought much about those things, but we sure had fun and lasting friendships. We went on all-day picnics in the summer, loading strollers, pots and pans, dishes, and plenty of good food. A few of the men started out earlier to get a table or two. When the rest of us arrived, the bacon and eggs were sizzling, and we all ate heartily. After a while, we happily went in a lovely man-made lake with the babies and other young children. It was great splashing. Afterwards, the men played horseshoes and bocce ball, while the moms fed the young ones, then started boiling water on the grill to cook pasta and warm up the sauce with meatballs and sausages. We used real dishes, which were later washed with hot water. Everyone pitched in. While the young ones were napping, we played cards and rested a while, then more games, more swimming, and before you knew it, it was time for our last meal of the day before it got dark. It was more simple, just hot dogs, hamburgers, salad, and plenty of desserts. It can't get any better than that. Such awesome memories to get us through some hard times. By the way, all this cost only $5 for each car, not counting the food, of course. Quite a bargain compared to prices these days, right? My sister reminded me, she said, but Joe, don't you remember when we became teenagers, we went on all-day picnics too. They started to name them all. Yeah. It was fun. Oh.
What's it?
Yeah, I will.
Go
ahead, Eva.
You. You're next.
I got it, thank you. Oh, I didn't have it, thanks.
My name is Eva Barkalos.
Use the microphone.
Okay. I have to have this on. Can't hear. My name is Eva Bartalos. I was born in Budapest, Hungary. Now live in Bronxville. My memoir is titled Bodri, the story of a dog who was loved by 3 brothers. The boys talked more and more about wanting a pet. Many of their friends had dogs, so they talked mostly about the dog pet. We lived in Scarsdale in a large house and had a quarter of an acre on the corner of Eastwoods and Southwoods Lane. One day I found an ad in a paper and headed straight to the house where I saw people choosing little black puppies. It didn't take long for me to pick one of the cutest little chubby black puppies. And when I lifted him up, I knew we are going to keep him and love him forever. So I happily paid the $25 and he came home with me in a cardboard box. I slowly opened the back door leading to the yellow kitchen and I saw Mike, Gabe, and Greg sitting over there, sitting around the yellow table, staring toward me in anticipation. And then they saw a little black tail hanging out of the box, which I held, and they yelled, "Oh my God, who is that in the box?" The excitement and joy was indescribable in the house. Our little pet could not even walk. He was just dragging his 2 hind legs behind him when he tried to get around. We wondered what should we name him. The boys decided to call him Bodri, which is the most popular dog name in Hungary. Practically every dog is called Bodri. Soon Bodri showed a strong feeling for all of us in our family, but he was following me mostly all around the kitchen in the house. He would show that he needed to go out by wagging his tail. And then after dinner, he would run around the table with the boys so that the dining room looked like a tornado would hit the house. The rugs, the chairs, the toys were flying, and the 3 boys had both run around and around the dining room table, screaming, laughing like crazy. He hated the mailman and our jogging neighbor, the lawyer. He could be quite vicious towards strangers, and we got almost sued when he ripped off the shorts from the lawyer's legs. We took him into the mountains, let him swim in a river. Unfortunately, Bodri was not only swimming in water, but also in oil. There was some oil spread around. When we got home, we put him in the bathtub, and 5 of us tried to explain to him that he needed a bath. Even though there were only 2 inches of water in the bathtub, he gave us a scary look and a growl, which clearly meant, "I am not going to have a bath, or you will be sorry." The downstairs room of the house was covered for the next 3-4 months with a sticky, oily black layer. But we loved him, and he was part of Christmas, building snowmen, hunting for Easter eggs, and romping in the autumn leaves for many years. Then one day, Gabe decided to move to North Hollywood, California. He asked me for 2 one-way airline tickets, one for himself and one for Bodri. Oh yes, and extra money for a cage. He came often to the East Coast to visit us and did a lot of traveling with Gabe. The filming crew adored him wherever they went, and they never forgot his birthday. They sang happy birthday and gave him a cake, which did not interest him too much, but happily watched as the crew ate up the whole cake. He was getting older and developed an illness which usually occurs in German shepherds. It was a difficult time for Gabe and for us when he left us. His enlarged photograph is hanging in my bedroom, and we think of him lovingly every day.
Right to your mouth. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Elaine Pagaroli. I was born and raised in Tuckahoe. Closer? Yeah. My name is Elaine Pagaroli, born and raised in Tuckahoe, and my memoir is titled Sanctuary. Sometimes I feel like my house has a special heart and soul all its own. It has faithfully provided shelter and warmth to 6 generations of my family, and just like me, it's still trying to hang in there. It came into existence shortly before the Civil War, its life interwoven within the history of my village and America, and this is chapter 1 of its story. My tale begins in the historic Lakeville section of Tuckahoe, situated near the Parkway Oval and the beautiful Bronx River. It is the earliest inhabited area in the village and played a significant role in the early history of our town. We believe the house was erected around 1860 on what is now Parkway Oval property to offer lodging to the many immigrants that came to work in the Tuckahoe marble quarries and the Old Stone Cotton Mill, and subsequently the Hodgman Rubber Company that was based along the river. Lakeville was a bustling community in the 1800s, but eventually time took its toll. At the turn of the 20th century, Westchester County, concerned with the pollution and devastation created by the industrial settlements that were based all along the Bronx River, instituted the development of the now famous Bronx River Parkway Reservation in order to protect and preserve the river and its surroundings. Because of this transaction, the houses on Parkway Oval property were put up for sale and relocated to vacant lots in Lakeville. It is at this point in time that my family enters into the story. My maternal grandparents, who originated from Bohemia in Central Europe, purchased the house in 1911 and had it moved by horses to its present location on River Street. As the name denotes, the Bronx River flows less than 200 feet from my house, making it a dead-end street and a delight to grow up on. My mother was only 3 years old and her brother was 5 when this little house began its love affair with my family. It has been a beloved sanctuary with a welcoming heart ever since. Almost 100 years of life-changing moments and treasured memories. But that, of course, is another story, or should I say, chapter 2.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, my next one will be chapter 2. Red the Peddler. I remember how lucky I felt as a kid growing up on River Street in Tuckahoe, especially in the summertime. In those days, on Saturday mornings, after listening on the radio to the Let's Pretend Children's Hour, I can still remember the cream of wheat shingle. My brother and I would be encouraged, if not actually pushed out the front door, to go out to play because our mother had to clean the house. Not to worry, there was always something to amuse us. On any given day, there would be an endless array of peddlers that would canvass our neighborhood, extolling their wares in pursuit of needy customers. Our favorite, of course, on the very hot, sultry days, was the Iceman. He would always break off a few pieces of ice for us with his pick before carrying the larger block into the house for the ice spots. To our parched palates, it truly tasted like nectar of the gods. Besides the Iceman, there was Hugen's Bakery Man, yum, the crystalline man to whiten our clothes, the knife sharpening man, the fish man, the junk man, and of course the milkman, But the most memorable of all, and my absolute favorite, was the vegetable man, better known as Red the Peddler. He was a real happening, and his large, impressive, open-back truck, with one side exposed like an open window, which was protected by a canvas awning, was laden with a colorful assortment of fruits and vegetables. It was truly a treasure to behold. Red was quite burly in stature, with a ruddy complexion, red hair, eyes that seemed to twinkle, and a warm, welcoming smile. Of Italian descent, he spoke with an accent and would always announce his arrival into our neighborhood with his own special litany. In resounding sing-song fashion, he would shout, "Vegetable man, cucumbers, cauliflower, watermelon," as he jauntily stepped down from his truck. The neighborhood women would flock around him, eager to sample the fresh produce and bargain. Italians, I learned, loved to bargain, and so it was that I would witness what seemed to be endless tips about prices, only to realize in my later years that this was quite natural among good-natured Italians, and everybody seemed very happy with the end result. Although we were not Italian, I'm sure my grandmother and mother bargained with Red in their own way, because everybody had to watch their pennies. I, on the other hand, an awestruck 7-year-old, was completely mesmerized with this amazing vegetable store on wheels. I loved to climb up into his truck and walk among the produce. There was an aisle in the middle with fruits and vegetables arranged on either side in tiers, braced up in wooden crates, all beautifully displayed. I remember the wonderful, earthy, fragrant aroma that emanated from this bounty, and the large hanging scale, swaying as we walked, eager to weigh in the next customer's purchase. But most of all, I remember Red's kindness and genuine warmth when he called me Dali and gave me a big, beautiful peach for free. That was a biggie, and something a very impressionable little girl would never forget. Through the years, as I grew up, Red would continue to come into our neighborhood, albeit sporadically, even when I myself was a grandmother, always giving you that something extra with his warm, generous nature, and still calling me Dali. That in itself was a gift. Seemingly ageless, he eventually retired and went to live with his daughter in the Bronx, finally ending his days in a nursing home. Whenever I find myself immersed in traffic, my car bogged down with packages from the supermarket, traipsing from one store to another, I think back to the simple days of my childhood and remember with fondness all of the peddlers that brought their own brand of sunshine and happiness into our lives and onto our doorsteps. But most of all, I remember Red the Peddler and smile. Now, my very dear friend, Mary Horvath, is in our class, and she's not feeling well. She couldn't be here today, so she asked me to read her story. Mary, of course, was born in Hungary, escaped from the communist regime in 1958. She came to this country. She loves America and loves Tuckahoe, but she loves to write about Hungary, and this one is about her grandmother. I just have to find it here. Here we go. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. My Oma's Oleander Bush by Mary Horvath. During the spring of 2010, I went to Cooper Corner Garden Center in Eastchester looking for tomato plants. As I walked by all the new bushes, my heart stopped. No, it can't be. I whispered and looked again. I must be dreaming. There is no such bush here. As I was bravely walking away. All of a sudden, I was back in Hungary, in our little village called Siklos, and my grandmother's house. My grandpa, retired principal of the local school. They lived in a house next to the school. My Oma came from Serbia, the small village of Dodri. She was a beautiful woman with dark curly hair. Grandpa, beside being a teacher, was also an artist. He painted and played the organ in our church and a piano at home. He was tall and slim with blue eyes. He loved good wine and loose women. My grandparents' living room had comfortable furniture, all in red velvet. Oma even allowed us to run on the furniture. When her friends asked her why, Her answer was, why not? Oma kept a big wooden tub in the yard for us to swim in. Of course, she also took us to the local pool in the summer months. The year was in the 1930s, so the pool was segregated. 5 a.m. the nuns, 6 a.m. the priests, 7 a.m. the male population, 9 a.m. the females. Later on, families were allowed to join in the water. In the yard, there were some fat cats and a turkey picking some grass. We never found out about the turkey's destiny. It was fun to be with Oma. She had lots of friends. There was always a party to attend. She curled my hair. I felt so grown up. I could play with her jewelry and walking in her high heels. To be in Seacrest was like being in Wonderland. During the summer months, we had our meals on the porch next to the house. Her beloved cats meowed. I never liked their fat tails as they walked by. My Oma did not have a big garden, but what she had were white, red, and pink oleander bushes. During the winter, the bushes had to be taken down to the basement. Come spring, they took their rightful place all around her garden. Before you knew it, they had the most beautiful blossoms on each bush. Shortly after we came to the USA, I found 2 pink-flowered oleander bushes in Texas. I loved and enjoyed them for years. They were part of my early life, part of my family, part of my Oma. But in 2010, one of my oleander bushes died. The other became anemic. I was broken as my research seemed useless. No oleander bush for me. Back to Cooper's Garden Center. Oh yes, the bush was still there. The little branches with their pink flowers were nodding in the spring wind. Yes, yes, we are Oma's reminder. It was like my Oma would smile at me. Quickly I grabbed the little bush, holding it tight to my heart. Oma, the oleander will get a loving home, just like in your house.
And I was born in Manhattan, and I live up here now. And my first memoir is called An Application of Nose, A Dose of Hilarity, a New York Minute. Morgan was blessed with many gifts, and he knew how to use them. He was a beguiling English Cocker Spaniel who possessed the timing of a stand-up comic and the charm of a Casanova. His well-defined sense of humor he probably got from my father's side of the family. He was quite the wit, but his joie de vivre was all his own. Down the street from our apartment was a small red brick building that housed a laundromat. The entrance to this petite establishment was a few steps down from the sidewalk. As the shop was so tiny and no doubt overly warm and humid, not to mention crowded, most patrons usually waited for their wash outside on the stairs, leaning against the wrought iron railing. In other words, their eye was focused on their tumbling wash just beyond the shop window, their backs negligent to the street and its passers-by. Now, being that this was in a good neighborhood, the Upper East Side, and just a few doors west of the ever-vigilant firemen who monitored the goings-on their turf and its environs, no one could accuse these innocent launderers of carelessness. But their nonchalance did come with a price. Never one to squander an opportunity, my earnestly enterprising pooch, Morgan, devised a tactic that would put this enticing, custom-made scenario to good use, and tickle his fancy as well. Whenever we would pass the laundromat, he could not restrain himself from making cold, wet contact with any innocently exposed neck found resting against the railing. nose to nape, with pinpoint accuracy. He never failed to elicit a response that nourished his apparent need for fun and fair play. Without fail, each object of his benign attack would wheel swiftly around, always counterclockwise for some reason, and utter, "What the?" followed closely by a smile and a chuckle as they saw the joy-filled, laughing face of this most benevolent of perpetrators, at which point they were amply rewarded by a full frontal face lick bestowed by their grateful assailant, inviting them into the game, making them a partner in the scheme, a co-conspirator rather than a victim. Only occasionally did I feel the need to foil these well-plotted forays of Morgan's when I deemed the intended target a potentially less than happy recipient of his benign shenanigans. But his judgment was usually sound, his skill deft, and his aim in administering his instrument of surprise accurate. As a practitioner of his art, Morgan was thus well recompensed each time he employed it, bestowing his special brand of sunshine onto the dour, gray byways of New York.
Very good.
The next memoir is called Chairs for Rent, Books to Borrow. Even before I could read, I could have found my way to the library. I remember the second floor children's room, where I was a frequent guest and an avid forager. The child-height wooden shelves held many treasures, which I culled and devoured with the passion of a proselyte. I remember the day that there, before the watchful eyes of my mother and the dutiful gaze of the librarian, I inscribed my name with the care of a surgeon and the solemnity of a scribe, thus ensuring for myself a privilege beyond words, my very own newly minted library card, a passport to the universe of paper and ink. In just a few years, being a child of the city, where independence and responsibility were taught as assiduously as the 3 R's, I was allowed, with the accompaniment of my best friend, to go to the library without benefit of any parental conveyance or supervision. With the regularity of the tides, Lorraine and I would descend from our neighborhood into another world, not familial, but yet still somewhat familiar, on a quest for the many realms and adventures to be found encased within the covers of our library's imprinted jewels. We made this journey every 2 weeks to carry home 6 tomes apiece, which we would consume with as much appetite as we would a box of Malamars. To this day, I could not name the street upon which that vault resided, but we knew that on the proper one, if we looked to the left, we would see a hanging metal sign suspended from the 2nd story of a building, adorned with a picture of a folding chair, party rentals, a banner that announced to us the bend in the road needed to be taken on our bi-monthly journey to the wondrous trove contained thereat, along the highway of our childhood.
Very good.
My name is Connie De Laurentiis. I was born in Astoria, New York, and I now live in Tuckahoe. My memoir is entitled Cars. To me, owning and driving a car has always meant being independent. To be able to get into my car whenever I want and drive to wherever I want is still, at the age of 72, my greatest feeling of independence. Growing up in Astoria and the Bronx, a car was not necessary. I thought at those points in my life that owning a car was a luxury. My mother and I had easy access to either bus or train transportation, and that was our usual mode of traveling. As I entered my late teens after graduation from high school, I was determined that one day I would own my own car. When I was 20 years old, my mother and stepfather moved to Collis Place, located near the Throgs Neck Bridge, and although there was bus transportation available, it became difficult to visit my friends who still lived in the Bronx. It also became difficult for me to stay in New York City, where I worked, and go out after work with my friends. I decided it was time to learn how to drive and save money to buy a car. I contacted a driving school and took lessons until the driving instructor thought I was ready to take the driving test. I took the test and passed on the first try. I was ready to buy a car. My first car was a used 1956 green and white Chevy, which I purchased at the beginning of 1960. I was so happy. I could now drive anywhere, and I did. The car had no power steering like the cars do today. By the time I was 21 years old, I was married. However, John's National Guard unit was called to active duty during the Cuban crisis, and he left for active duty exactly 1 month from the day we got married. I was so happy I had purchased the car before I was married because it still gave me that independent feeling. It didn't take me long to realize I should school myself regarding the way the car worked. I learned how to put oil in the car whenever the oil light came on, which it often did. I learned how to change a tire when it got flat. When John returned from active duty, we moved to Eastchester in order for him to be closer to his job at Union Carbide Corporation in Eastview. John also traveled to Bridgeport, Connecticut after work in order to attend Bridgeport University. It was at this point in time that John decided to purchase a new green 1966 Volkswagen Beetle, which was a standard shift car. Believe it or not, in 1966, the new car cost $1,800.
Oh my God.
Of course, I was not able to drive the car because I did not know how to drive a standard shift car. The 1956 Chevy was on its last breath, so we purchased another used car so that I could drive to Yonkers to work every day. The car was a used red and white 1957 Ford, which we thought was a steal when it was purchased. The car itself was a good running car, but the body was not in good shape and pieces started to fall off. This was embarrassing when parts of the car fell off while I was driving. I knew how to attend to the workings of the car, but how do you piece it back together when it falls apart? I still wanted to drive the new car, and John would take me out driving whenever he got a chance. I eventually learned how to drive a standard shift, and on my first solo outing, I burnt out the clutch. Fortunately, the car was under warranty, and we were able to have the car fixed at no expense to us. So, after the fiasco with the used Ford, and since I now knew how to drive a standard shift, we decided to purchase another Volkswagen Beetle. We found a used red Volkswagen. I could fit my 2 children and my friend Terry and her 3 children in the Volkswagen. And we traveled anywhere and everywhere. Whenever my Volkswagen didn't start, I could push it to the top of the hill on which I lived, put the car in first gear, let it roll, and jump in it when it started. Whenever I wanted to go somewhere, I would go to any lengths to be able to get there. I loved my red Volkswagen. I drove the red Volkswagen for many years. In fact, my red Volkswagen lasted longer than my first marriage.
That's so cute.
When my loyal red Volkswagen finally ran out of steam, the next car I drove was a 1977 tan Cadillac. I went from driving a small Volkswagen to a rather large car. At first it felt as though I was driving a boat, and it took me time to adjust to the size of the car. Needless to say, I have driven many cars since I purchased my first car in 1960. I have always kept my cars in excellent working order and made sure that the oil is changed every 3,000 miles in all my cars. There were times we leased cars and there were times we purchased cars. In 2001, I purchased a 2001 silver Chevy Malibu. I purchased the car because I thought I would be retiring in 2005, and I planned to have the car with no car payments when I retired. Well, my plan went very well. The Malibu was a great car, and I felt it would last as long as I did. I retired in 2005, and the car was fully paid. How does that saying go? The best laid plans? Well, everything was going well until one day when I was grocery shopping at the Stop and Shop store located on Route 22 in Eastchester. I was parked in the parking lot and checking out at the cash register when I heard my license plate being called over the loudspeaker. The person was asking the owner of a Malibu to go to the car. I went outside and found my beautiful, excellent running car, well taken care of, was crushed by a tractor trailer that was driven the wrong way into the parking lot. I was devastated. My car was deemed totaled by the insurance company. I was without a car for 2 months until finances were settled, and during that time I felt that I had lost my independence. I am now, at age 72, driving a 2011 Honda CR-V, which I hope will last as long as I do. A short one about my mother. And this is entitled Foster Mother. I recently read a book entitled The Language of Flowers. The book was about a girl who grew up in the foster system. It chronicled her unhappiness and rebellion as she moved from home to home. The book was interesting, well written, and held my interest. The purpose of this memoir is not to review the book, but rather it brought to mind my mother's life when she was a foster mother. My mother loved children, and as I learned growing up as an only child, she birthed a son before me who was strangled with the umbilical cord at birth. She never had another child after me because life turned her into a single mother after my birth when my father became very ill. My mother became a foster mother when I married and left the home. She decided it was time to stay home rather than go out to work. I really don't know how or why she made this decision. Perhaps it was her love of children, or perhaps the house felt too empty after I left. Whatever the reason, she became a loving and caring foster mother. Her status was temporary foster mother. The first child she was given was a young baby girl who had been left in a bar. She took such good care of the baby as though she was the grandmother. That was the usual routine. She would receive a child under the age of 1 year and get to keep the child until 2 or 3 years old. Occasionally, a caseworker for the foster system would visit the house to make sure everything was going well. There were also times when my mother had to bring the child to New York City for a supervised visit with a parent. It was easy for my mother to become very fond of the children, and it became difficult to give them up at the end of 2 years. The last foster child Mother had was Kenny Anderson. Kenny's father was American and his mother was Japanese. Her name was Rayako. Kenny came to Mother's when he was 1 year old. At one of the supervised visits in New York City, Kenny's mother slipped a note to my mother containing her phone number, asking her to please call her. When Mother called Rayako, Rayako told her how much she missed Kenny and asked whether she could come to the house on Sundays to visit. According to foster care rules and regulations, this was taboo. However, Mother had a big heart, felt sorry for Rayako, and invited her to the house. Rayako told Mother she was a college student who got pregnant when she met Kenny's father, but that he was no longer in the picture. Rayako's heart was broken when she had to give Kenny to foster care, but she felt it was important to finish her education, get a job, and take care of Kenny. The Sunday visits became a weekly occurrence without the foster care's knowledge, and Rayako found a new American family. When Rayako graduated college, she found a job, and when Kenny was old enough to enroll in nursery school, he went back to live with his mother. Rayako, Kenny, and Mother communicated for many years. I am sure there are many competent and caring foster parents, but unfortunately, only the horror stories are reported. When Margaret Ann was born and Mother became a grandmother, she gave up foster care to spend more time with her first granddaughter.
My name is Holtz. I was born in Astoria, and I'm Queens, and I now live in Eastchester. My memoir is entitled My Granddaughters. I often think what was the best time of my life, and I must say there were so many best times. After my daughters were married, I thought that it would be so wonderful to be a grandmother. Many of my friends were already grandmothers, and I was a little envious of them. Of course, it was my daughters' lives and their choice to have children or not. When we received the news that my little daughter Elaine was pregnant, I, my husband, and my son-in-law's mother, also known as Grandma Mildred, were over the moon with joy. We looked forward to the arrival of our first grandchild, Angela Helene. She was born October 2nd, 1993, and it was a joyous occasion. I was still working at the time, but my husband was already retired. When Elaine's maternity leave ended, Grandpa and Grandma Mildred took over the babysitting chores. They divided the week between them, and it all worked out well. My husband, who was not involved in the care of his own 3 daughters, turned out to be an excellent caregiver. He changed diapers, mixed formula, fed her, started to potty train, and played with Angela. I was a little jealous, but I did enjoy my job. I was a legal secretary and enjoyed working in Manhattan. It gave me a rush to be involved with getting documents together, getting them to FedEx on time, and the whole group was delighted when we won the case. However, as we all know, everything comes to an end. Elaine, after less than 2 years, announced that she was expecting again. The arrival of our second granddaughter, Carolyn Rose, was July 23rd, 1985, a rainy summer's night. Again, Grandpa, or Pop-Pop as they later called him, and Grandma Mildred took over to take care of the girls. Elaine enrolled Angela in daycare near her office for a few days. Angela took going to daycare hard. When she refused to kiss Grandpa, he asked her why, and she said that she doesn't kiss him or Grandma Mildred anymore. and we knew why. He asked that I retire and begin taking over some of the babysitting chores. Reluctantly, I did and stopped working at the end of June 1996. It was actually the best thing I did. I enjoyed being with the girls and seeing them grow up. We did a lot of things together, and I had to come up with inventive games. I was part of their little play group. We played the board games such as Sorry, Monopoly, and the various card games, namely Old Maid, Uno, and Goldfish were among our favorites. We also played restaurant where we had menus, and one of us was the waitress and the other the guests. My favorite game was Store. We had a little shopping cart, and I saved boxes for the store. We also had a small cash register. One of us was the cashier, and the others were customers. One summer day, we just had Carolyn, since Angela was enrolled in dance camp for a few days. Carol and I had just set up the store when we received a call from Elaine informing us that she had to pick up Angela from dance camp since she was sick, and she was bringing her over to us. When Angela arrived, she was with us no more than 5 minutes and had a miraculous recovery. She immediately took over the store despite her sister's protests, and a good time was had by all after our little dispute was settled. We took care of the girls until they started kindergarten. The girls were enrolled in daycare 2 or 3 days a week, and all of us were there for them when needed. My daughter often traveled, and we took care of them either at our house or we stayed at their home. The 3 of us actually thought we should thank Joe and Elaine for letting us take care of the girls instead of them thanking us. Some of us different. They did go to dance camp, but we had them also. We had a small unheated cabin at Candlewood Lake, and we would spend a week in Eastchester and 1 week in Fairfield, Connecticut. The girls would come up on occasion and enjoy the lake. One summer's day, I heard the typical phrase that children say, "Oh, Grandma, we were so bored." My husband and I always had a big Labor Day picnic at the lake, and we used to have it down in Eastchester until we bought the cabin. My daughters and the children next door would put on a show, and I said to my granddaughters, "Your mother and your aunts, together with their friends, used to put on a show. Why don't you create something?" And we all have the show, and we will have the show at the lake house. This was the best thing for them. After settling on who would be the director and producer, we started production. The first show, The Jazz Kids, was written by Angela, and the dance was developed by both Angela and Carolyn. I was just one of the lowly cast members. It filled our summer days with rehearsals and deciding what we would wear for the show and making programs. The climax was on Labor Day when we performed before our company. Our shows were a huge success, at least in our opinion. Grandma, Pop-Pop, Angela, and Carolyn used to walk to the grocery store. We would each pick out a roll for lunch, and on the way home we would have a race as to who would get home first. Each girl would pick a partner. Needless to say, I was a winner, and everyone wanted to be my partner. I sent a copy of this writing to Angela at college. She emailed me and said that I forgot one important detail. The detail was the 3 of us running under the sprinklers in our backyard and screaming when the water hit us. Carolyn enjoyed sitting in the small plastic pool. I wonder now if my neighbors thought it was a little crazy for Grandma to be running around in her backyard in her bathing suit, but I did enjoy it. As all things, this too came to an end, and it was gratifying, however, when after looking at the albums, my Angela said, "Those were happy times. Now if I need help with the computer, I go to them."
Good afternoon. My name is Gilda DeMayo. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and Tuckahoe has become my home for over 60 years, and I've adopted it as my home. My first memoir was called Yesterday, when I was young. Tuckahoe at that time could be compared easily to Andy Griffin's Mayberry, USA, a small historical village whose marble quarries were known countrywide. As you walked to all the mom and pop shops, you would greet at least 10 people to chat with. We lived in a small apartment on Underhill Street. Stephen was 3 and Bobby was 18 months younger. When Stephen was born, my parents bought a beautiful maroon leather coach carriage for us. I don't know if anybody remembers those. Therefore, fully equipped, we walked everywhere. Columbus Avenue, before it became urbanized, was the place to do your marketing. Joe's Pork Store, GM Vegetable Market, Red's Italian Deli, Mr. Moresco the Tailor, Alberto's Bakery, Sam London's Furniture, and everyone's favorite, Epstein's Clothing Store. Epstein has served Tuckahoe for 3 generations and has survived the village's gentrification. Around the corner on Main Street was a small A&P, a children's shoe store, and Mr. Wasner's 5 and 10. The shops on Columbus Avenue were usually 2 stories with an apartment above. Beautiful architecture from our own marble trim, all torn down to make room for the new. This saddened many of us. My friends Flo, Addie, and I walked to Bronxville Village through the park at least twice a week. Carriages and babies in tow, enjoying the simple things, admiring the ducks who glided along the clear lake. Often we picked dandelion flowers, and the children tried so hard to blow their frizziness away. Woolworth's was our usual destination, that resplendent store with so many items to tempt us. I miss Woolworth's to this day. Tuckahoe's library was located in our then beautiful village hall. It was in the center of Depot Square. This one-of-a-kind building housed the police department as well. The library held story hours for young children twice a week. The librarian enthralled the children reading stories, and it was a treat for mothers as well. We had a separate side entrance. The village business was managed in the main building. As you walked up the stairs and looked up, you would always pause and admire the magnificent rotunda of stained glass. The building has changed owners 3 times. It is now the Generoso Pope Foundation for Cultural Arts. Our trip home was to stop at one of the food stores. We all lived up a hill, the norm in our village. Flo and Addie were each pushing 1 child. I had 2, one in the carriage and one sitting on a small seat strapped across the top and groceries tucked under the carriage base. This was daunting, but at 25, with strong legs, arms, and back, it was a snap. To be continued with fond memories of the Lyric Theater and unforgettable Merry Christmases in quaint and memorable Tuckahoe, long past.
Very good.
And one more very short one. Stardom thwarted. Yesteryear, when we were children, Saturday matinee at the Oriental Movie House was a treat we waited for all week long. Is there anywhere else that you can watch 2 cartoons followed by 2 feature films for 25 cents? We all know there is not. On any given Saturday, the manager would give us a treat, a thaw amateur hour before our fun began. All participants received a prize. My sisters, Ursula and Jo, decided that I should go on stage. I was their baby sister, and to them I could sing adorably. They had me rehearse all week, and I was eager for the promised prize. 5-year-olds are very gullible. Saturday morning I was dressed in my best clothes, and my busted brown haircut was shining. With Mom's hugs and kisses settled, we went our way. As usual, the theater was packed with children. The show began. My sisters proudly walked me to the stage, and up I went. I was one of many in the giggly group. When my name was called, I shyly stepped up, ready for anything, I thought. Mary Had a Little Lamb sounded so much better at home, with my family watching. My sister sat in front and told me to look only at them and sing. I did my best, very slowly. This done, I was handed my prize. It was a pretty rag doll with long pigtails. The manager asked if I would give him a kiss for the prize. I looked at him, swung the doll at his cheek, and ran off the stage.
Oh my goodness.
The audience went into a roar of applause. My sisters grabbed me and we ran out the door. I don't think they thought I was so adorable then. Their matinee was ruined. Mommy said I was a good girl. Kissing strangers was out. Therefore, I enjoyed a double scoop ice cream cone, and a new doll was mine as well. So always do what Mama says.
My name is Rosemary Rule, and I was born and raised in the Bronx and have been living in Eastchester for over 30 years. And I'm going to begin with one of my memories from the Bronx, strolling through my neighborhood, and I call it a day near the beginning of summer. It's a day near the beginning of summer, quite an ordinary day from all appearances. The sun is shining, and in the air there's a soft breeze, fragrant with the fullness of spring. I'm walking home from school, passing the playground at Hillside Homes. Only a few times in my life do I actually remember playing in that playground. My friend Annette, who lived down the block from me, had a relative, it may have been an aunt, who brought us there. I remember slowly climbing the steps of the sliding pond, adjusting myself to be seated properly at the top of the slide. I was wearing a dress which called for a ladylike position before letting go of the handrails and sliding down the sheet of shiny hot metal. I screeched as I descended, not merely from joy, but from the burns inflicted on the back of my legs as I journeyed down the fiery chute. Thoughts flashed to the swings. I remember the difficulty I had getting myself up on that swaying slab of wood as it dangled from its two long chains. I had to stand on my tippy toes and to grasp the chains tightly as I lifted my body onto the seat. Being able to sit on the swing all by myself was the first big accomplishment. It was fun being pushed high into the air and feeling the delight of simply moving freely to and fro. But the time had come for me to learn how to create this wondrous experience all by myself. Pump and push your legs out. Pump, push your legs in. Pump, pump slowly. Then pump faster and faster, soaring higher and higher. You can almost touch the sky. Tilt your head back, and you seem to fly over the trees. I hear the sounds of kids laughing, and I know that I am one of them. It feels so good. After passing the playground, I hear the sound of bells and anticipate the long-awaited appearance of the Bungalow Bar ice cream truck. Maybe I could rush home before it's found its way to my block. I had to cross Boston Post Road. I walked across the cobblestone street that still had trolley car tracks embedded in its surface, though the trolley was long gone in our neighborhood before I was born. When I was about 4 or 5, I remember Ma taking me on the trolley when it was running in the area of Gun Hill and White Plains roads in the Bronx. The sights and sounds of the trolley ride will remain with me always. Even the bumpy impressions left on my knees from kneeling on the straw-woven seats while staring out the open windows. I stopped for a moment and looked up and down Boston Road before racing home to beat the bungalow truck. Lowe's Theater up the hill, Melba Theater down the hill. I like thinking that tomorrow is Saturday, and maybe Mom will let me go to the movies. Saturday matinee for kids, cartoons galore, and a double feature, all for 20 or 25 cents. If I were allowed to go, I'd have to return the empty bottles for deposit money to Julius, who was the owner of the Italian grocery store that was down the street from our house. Our family, as many other families on our block, had run up a bill at Julius's with the promise to pay at the end of the week. There were times when we couldn't pay the bill in full and carried over a balance. But there I was on Saturday morning collecting deposit money when we hadn't even paid for the contents of those bottles. Good old Julius. As I continued my trek home, I bumped into a couple of friends. They asked if I was going to the movies on Saturday afternoon. The answer to this question held the foremost place in the minds of just about every kid in the neighborhood. I gave a little sigh and replied, "Don't know yet, gotta ask my mother." When I neared my home, I could see Mama sitting alongside the stoop outside our house. She was talking and laughing with one of the neighbors. I loved seeing Ma sitting outside the house. I kind of felt like she was waiting there just for me. Mama sat there, donned in a simple house dress, Ma like hers with a zipper down the front, and her red and navy blue leather slippers. For a fleeting moment, I felt special. There was no hugging or kissing, but I felt loved. The familiar sound of bells caught my attention, and I turned to Ma and pleaded for a bungalow bar. Ma said, "No, we'll be eating dinner soon." She told me to go to Julius and buy 2 boxes of Ronzoni spaghetti and a loaf of Italian bread. And she reminded me, "Don't forget the bill book." Ma said she would wait outside until I got back. I felt like skipping down the street. Life wasn't easy for Mama inside our house. 6 kids in all. I was next to the youngest. When I returned from the store, Ma was still sitting outside the house just like she said she would be. On this very special day, near the beginning of summer, I realized how much I loved Mom. Next, I'm going to read my sister's wedding. I'm going to read my sister's wedding, in case you didn't hear me. My sister's wedding date was changed from June to August because Ma was expecting. June was the month most brides thought was perfect for getting married. Weather-wise, June had more sun than rain. It wasn't too hot or too cold, and a reasonable consideration when air conditioning wasn't an option. June was a month in full bloom with color, fragrance, and sights and sounds of new life, including the hungry wails of my kid brother Joey, who weighed in at nearly 11 pounds. My sister's wedding day was certainly going to be a memorable one for her, but it would be equally memorable for me because I was her flower girl. I was all of 5 years old, dressed in a beautiful blue gown with a kind of heart-shaped headpiece and a brand new pair of white sandals. I was playing a role in a fairy tale, and an important one at that. I was the princess. I had almost as much attention as the bride. At home, before the wedding, I remember being asked to place a fancy garter on my sister's leg. All of a sudden, a bright light flashed as a photographer shot a picture of us that has been frozen in time for nearly 60 years. My expression was one of wonder. Daddy looked so different when he put his false teeth in his mouth. He looked so much younger, though he talked funny. The tuxedo he was wearing made him look tall and handsome. Ma looked beautiful in her gown. She wore a corsage of gardenias, which was her favorite flower. My oldest brother, Matt, was one of the ushers in the bridal party. So he too got to wear a tuxedo. Only he had a white jacket. My dad's was black. My brothers, Kenny and Willie, got new shirts, pants, and shoes that Mom most likely picked up at Hearn's Bargain Basement at 149th Street and 3rd Avenue in the Bronx. Upon entering the church, I walked down the aisle in front of my sister. I held a beautiful bouquet of flowers. I truly believed that the oohs and ahs and the familiar faces in the pews were there for me. As I reached the front pew, my mother's arms grabbed me and pulled me into the space alongside her. Left on my own, I would have walked straight up to the altar. After all, isn't that where the princess should be? Mark cried as the organist played and a woman sang the Ave Maria. After the church ceremony, I got to ride in a limousine. I was really fascinated with the 2 little fold-down seats. I was thrilled riding with my sister. We were in the first car leading a parade of cars circling the streets around our neighborhood. Horns were honking and hands were waving and neighbors were rushing out of their houses and onto the sidewalk to cheer the new bride and groom. Now it was picture-taking time. Pictures of the entire bridal party were taken on this huge lawn. I have no idea where it was, but in 1947 the Bronx wasn't short of beautiful lawns. It was on to the reception, which was held at the Bronx Winter Garden. It was what you call at that time a football wedding. About 500 people were invited. Back then, the weddings were truly considered a family affair. Just about everyone who touched your life was invited, and their families too. I remember my sister inviting Henry the mailman. Everyone in my family loved Henry, as did so many others in our neighborhood. He was colored. We didn't use the word black back then. Henry didn't think he would fit in, but my sister insisted that she wanted him there, so he came. Pitchers of beer and soda were placed on each of the seemingly endless number of tables, along with an assortment of bagged sandwiches made on small round rolls. Exchanging sandwiches between the tables became a toss and catch. A cup of cold for a ham sandwich, a salami for a bologna. The person who caught the sandwich would sometimes make a run for it, holding tight to it within the arena of shouting fans. No celebration would be complete without music and dancing. My brother-in-law was in a band. They played at the Blue Moon Bar on weekends. Sometimes the band played at parties, but on this special night, they played for the bride and groom. Our families, influenced greatly by Italian culture, would not have missed the opportunity to sing Way Marie and dance the Tarantella. Dad, like polkas, he loved the song Roll Out the Barrel, we're having a barrel of fun. We all ate, drank, danced, laughed, and had lots and lots of fun. With the heart-shaped bonnet off, flowers wilted, my curly hair drenched in sweat, a little girl was carried home.
That's my mom. All right, my name is Danae Rivera Shanley. I was born in the Bronx and spent most of my years, and my kids grew up in Eastchester. I now live up in Brewster. All right, my first one is entitled Some Random Thoughts About Easter. Easter was a confusing holiday when I was a child. Before there was any explanation of the religious aspect, all you had to go on were the memorable elements. These were naturally absorbed and compared with the other major holiday, Christmas. First, there were the basics of what to expect upon waking up. For Christmas, Santa Claus had been monitoring you for months, and hopefully he wasn't paying close attention those few times that you were a bit naughty. Sometimes you could take a proactive approach and send him a letter to the North Pole telling him how good you'd been and putting in specific gift requests. On Christmas Eve, you would put up your stocking, leave out some cookies and milk as a bribe, and go to bed. As a reward for your efforts, and because of his philanthropic nature, Santa would then come to your house at night and leave presents under your tree and in your stocking. You would open them, and that was it. Play with your toys and wait for Christmas dinner. On Easter, the Easter Bunny, who was apparently uninterested in behavior modification, would also come during the night. The Easter Bunny character was much less well-defined and hard to contemplate for a child. Did he look like a man in a bunny suit, like the one in the mall, or was he an actual rabbit? Well, a real rabbit couldn't carry much around, so that didn't make much sense. There was no way to communicate with the Easter Bunny, no known address, and it's unclear if he was even able to read. For that matter, could the Easter Bunny talk? You never heard him saying anything. Even the guys in the mall dressed like him were eerily silent when he sat on their laps for pictures. There wasn't the same major build-up to Easter, it just kind of happened. Out of nowhere, your mom tells you it's time to color Easter eggs. Oh, this usually seemed as though it would be great fun. Mom would hard boil some eggs and my brother and I would get to paint them with paintbrushes. Well, that lasted 1 year. Between the mess and the probable toxicity of the paints, subsequent years were spent with small cups of food coloring and vinegar and Q-tips for application, generally unsatisfying. Never mind the inevitable casualties who try to escape by rolling off the table. For neat freaks like my mother, the egg coloring experience resulted in much suffering and often a lot of yelling. In any case, you would leave out your Easter basket on Saturday night, and when you woke up on Sunday, it would be full of stuff, mostly candy. Jelly beans that no one would eat, marshmallow peeps that were gross, and chocolate. Now this was the good stuff. Never mind the chocolate rabbit, the only good part of him are his sugary, crunchy eyes. The best thing was the giant Cadbury ball. There were also little toys. I would always get a stuffed animal to add to my collection. There would be one of those wooden paddles with the ball attached by a rubber string. Those were great until it broke or someone got a rubber ball to the eye. My brother would get Matchbox cars. This was fun stuff, and you didn't even have to be good to get it. What was the Easter Bunny's motivation anyway? We never did know. Again, this was probably related to the fact that he was a mute and couldn't tell you. But just when you thought that candy for breakfast was the best part of Easter morning, you remember the bunny's other weird habit, the thing with the eggs. You go to the basket where your Q-tip colored eggs had been, and sure enough, it was empty. But unlike Santa, who devoured the offerings you left for him, the Easter Bunny did not eat all your eggs, he hid them around your house. He just couldn't help himself. It was like an OCD behavior. Well, since he had to make you look high and low for your works of art, he felt it was only fair to at least add some money to them, to add to the joy upon recovering them. That's right, money. Nickels and dimes taped to the eggs would be yours to keep to buy, well, more candy. This Easter Bunny was my kind of guy, and the best part is it was actually kind of fun to look for the eggs. But we tried not to let on because we liked getting the money. Eventually, my mother managed to encourage the Easter Bunny to hide plastic eggs with the money inside instead of the real ones, which proved disastrous if left unfound. He happily complied and even began leaving the jelly beans in the eggs so that you didn't have to search through the plastic grass of your basket for them. He's quite flexible, apparently. So despite the fact that Santa's Christmas presents were always more substantial, the Easter Bunny was always special to me. And this one is Summer in the Bronx. When I was a child, our summers in the Bronx were simple. There were no adventurous vacations or fancy camps. We spent the time out playing with the kids in our neighborhood pretty much as we always did. Riding bikes and big wheels, we'd venture as far as the corner of our block, which provided a wide stretch of smooth concrete in front of the old Bon Bread factory. I believe this factory was out of commission for several years at this point, and I've never actually seen Bon Bread, but the term was still used amongst all the kids in phrases such as, "I'll race you down to Bon Bread." We played stickball in the street, pausing the game whenever a car came down our one-way avenue. Sometimes the teenagers from across the street would open up the fire hydrant, which would provide hours of fun splashing, using a modified soda can to aim the spray at your friend's face, and getting a refreshing reprieve from the city heat. We would watch rather anxiously on the 4th of July, from the safety of our courtyard, as the boys from across the street placed a garbage pail, metal of course, in the middle of the street, lit a fire in it, and tossed in a seemingly endless supply of firecrackers. Sometimes we'd take a walk to Bronx Park, but hot metal swings and slides are not a particularly enjoyable pastime in the summer, and we were much more content to stay on our familiar block. We knew every inch of it, where the sidewalk was cracked, where it went from rough to smooth pavement, where the mean super would come out to yell at you if you stayed near his building too long, and where the sidewalk sloped down too far to get back up easily on a bike. One summer, when my brother and I were still quite young, my mother signed us up for some sort of summer program at the school. I don't remember very much of it, but I do recall that we practiced singing some songs and that we were going to perform them for our families. I took this project very seriously. I knew all the words to the song and was fully prepared to demonstrate my vocal skills for our big show. We were told where and how to stand on stage, with a space between all of us. My little brother Damon, who clearly lacked my professionalism, was going to be standing next to me. When the performance began, we filed onto the stage, faced out to the audience, and began our song. I was extremely focused and enjoying showing off, when off to the side I felt an intrusive hand. I didn't want to look. We were supposed to face out, but I suspected that my brother was trying to hold my hand. Unacceptable. This was not in the script. I pulled my hand away and continued singing. And then there it was again, my brother's little hand grasping at mine. No, Damon, I turned on him with the fury of a frustrated Broadway producer. We do not hold hands. My terrified and humiliated brother began to cry. He sat down on the stage and cried. The audience found this amusing and laughed, which made him cry harder. I had no sympathy and simply fumed at him for ruining the show. Of course, I still feel guilty about it now, especially having to relive the moment through blurry photographs taken by my mother as this drama occurred. However, in my defense, I was doing as I was told, so shouldn't I be commended? I'd like to think that if I had it to do over again, I'd proudly take my brother's hand, smile, and finish the song, but I was not that kind of kid. I wanted to be perfect in a world where things are not. I think I may have learned that this isn't possible, but it doesn't keep me from trying. In any case, my mother decided to let us spend our summers after that on our block on Barker Avenue, where we love to be.
In closing, I have one very, very short memoir. This year we lost one of our memoir members. She is now writing in memoir writing heaven, and we miss her very, very much. And I just want to close with her memoir called The Wedding Dress. In 1966, her name is Patricia Fine. Thank you. In 1966, we were living in an apartment in Jim's parents' home in Mount Vernon, New York. Jim was a surgical resident at the Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City. We were very poor. We survived on donations of spaghetti and meatballs made by Jim's parents. Instead of milk, the children drank milkshakes made with Enfamil, a baby formula donated by a friendly drug salesman. Many of our possessions were stored in the cellar. The dress from my wedding was packed in a cardboard box in one of the bedroom closets. And Pop's dog, Smokey, who lived downstairs, visited frequently. Into this mix of 5 young children, we added a little hamster named Hamlet. One day, Hamlet was gone. There were many theories. He ran away, Smokey ate him, he died, and Mom hid him in the trash can, etc. One night, I had gone to check on baby Sue, who was crying. She slept in a little closet at the end of the hall, which had a window. This was a prized location, as the other 4 children shared another bedroom which featured 2 bunk beds. I emerged from Sue's bedroom, and what did I see coming down the hall? Yes, it was Hamlet carrying a dog's milk bone in his little mouth. He was taking it back to his lair, which was, you guessed it, the box holding my wedding dress. There was a small hole in the side. The gown had been chewed and shredded to make a comfy bed. There was also quite a lot of dry dog food. The pretty gown and Hamlet's nest ended up in the garbage. Hamlet lived out the remainder of his life in his cage. His exercise was on the little wheel which he used to good avail, squeaking well into the night, no doubt fantasizing about his month of freedom and sleeping in my wedding dress.
Oh my goodness.
As you have heard today, memoir writing is really a lot of fun, and we invite you to join us the first Tuesday of each month.
Thursday.
I have so many memoir writing days. The first Thursday of every month, and see, I have a very bright class with me. The first Thursday of every month, and we start at 12 o'clock. All right, and it's like being a family. The only way I can say it. We enjoy each other's lives.
Yes.
Thank you for coming, and join our reception.
Just like
Thank you so much, everyone, and I'd like to invite our Mayor Ackland here. I think who enjoyed also listening to all of you.
I did. Thank you so much. What a beautiful afternoon. I really, really enjoyed myself. And I want to thank you ladies for just allowing us to spend an afternoon in a day in your lives. I mean, just wonderful stories. The old stories about Tuckahoe certainly bring back some very, very good memories of mine. But I want to say that you forgot Henry Bale, the Eggman. I don't know if you remember the Eggman used to be. Because he was my favorite as a kid. So thank you all so much. I really, really enjoyed it.
That's funny. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
And just to note that every year we do a memoir anthology, all right? And these are our baby pictures. Yeah.
Before we all disperse, I want to, from our group, I would like to present our mentor with a beautiful bouquet. She listens to us every month, and she never ever criticizes. She just gives us hints. And also, I want to present this to Swadesh from us, because when the Friends of the Library came to her and asked if we could keep going, she graciously said yes. And we support the memoir writing group, and we will never, ever not support them, because it's a great group. And anyone wants to join, as Edith said, we're happy to have people. Thank you.
So this is the book the teacher puts together.
Thank you so much.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay? Got it. No?
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.